My family said don't guilt us and chose a concert over my big night. Now I'm living my best life, knowing they'll never reach me. My name is Paul. I'm 27 years old, and I've always played a supporting role in my family's story. I'm the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who never causes trouble but doesn't appear to deserve any credit. My parents and my younger brother Caleb had a habit of hovering around each other, noisy, demanding, and continually expecting me to take whatever position they assigned me. I used to convince myself I didn't mind because being overlooked allowed me to avoid the turmoil. However, being invisible in your own home eats away at you until it becomes all you think about. Caleb was always the favored child. He's 2 years younger, yet the moment he booted a soccer ball, he became the star. My parents attended all of his games, screamed from the sidelines, and threw celebrations for his accomplishments. When I returned home with good grades, they'd nod and say, "That's expected." When Caleb scored a goal, even if his team lost, it seemed like a celebration. The birthdays were the same. His would be a parade of balloons, cakes, and extravagant gifts. Mine were usually meals at home, and possibly a sweater I did not want. It was not a shortage of things that hurt. It sent the notion that my efforts were ordinary and his were outstanding. I attempted to play it off. I tried to be supportive. I did not want to be the jealous brother. But within, I felt a faint sorrow every time they brushed me aside. Nonetheless, I kept pushing myself through college, internships, and sleepless evenings working on projects that no one in my family ever inquired about. Caleb partied his way through university whilst I worked hard. Even though they didn't notice, I knew it would be important one day. That day came when I received a nomination for an award in my field. It wasn't a little recognition either. It was the type of honor that could shift the course of my career. Months of hard effort, late nights, and sacrifices had culminated in this moment. For once, something significant had my name on it, and I wanted my family to be present. Against my better judgment, I reached for my phone and entered a message into the family group chat. "I'm getting an award tonight. It would be very appreciated if you arrived." I hesitated before pushing send, part of me knowing how this would end, but also hoping that they might surprise me. The typing bubble appeared nearly instantly. It was Caleb. He wrote, "We're going to a concert instead." Just like that. There was no hesitancy, no thought, and no question regarding the nature of the prize. A concert. Some band he probably won't remember in a month. My mother spoke up before I could even grasp how hurtful that was. "Don't guilt us," she typed, as if my request was a burden, as if I was forcing them to choose between breathing and suffocating. I focused on the TV, my chest constricting. I felt a surge of heat travel up my neck. I wanted to shout, to ask why it was always like this, why I didn't matter. Instead, I simply typed back 2 words. "All right." And I intended it. Not in the way they expected, and not in the way that said I would accept being sidelined again. Something within of me shifted in that instant. I wasn't a child anymore, hoping for their approval. I wasn't waiting for their applause or cheers. Who night, I'd stand in front of a throng who recognized me and acknowledged what I'd accomplished. And my family would be exactly where they wanted to be. What none of them realized was that this awards presentation was not a quiet backstage affair. It was supposed to be broadcast live, not just online, but on television. Cameras, interviews, and the works. My name would be spoken, my face on the screen, and my narrative conveyed. And when the spotlight finally found me, the individuals who had spent years making me feel invisible would be forced to see me with everyone else. But before that time came, I had to deal with the usual sting of disappointment. I recall pacing my small apartment that afternoon, thinking about what I'd answer if they asked why I didn't push them harder to come. Should I guilt them again? Should I describe how much it meant to me? Should I let the silence do the talking? My mind went in circles, and yet, behind it all, there was a peculiar serenity, as if I was standing on the verge of something greater than the years of negligence that had passed. The prize was one thing, but the real change was occurring within me. For once, I wasn't simply surviving their absence. I let it fuel me. Every contemptuous comment, every overlooked milestone, and every shrug at my accomplishment had all led up to this moment. Even though they had known, I had already begun scripting the next chapter in our family's story. My phone buzzed again that evening as I slipped into the outfit I'd purchased months before with money I had saved. Caleb had sent a picture of himself and his companions smiling outside the concert venue, holding drinks, with the phrase, "Best night ever." Mom loved the message with a heart. Dad said, "Enjoy it, you deserve it." My hand clenched on the phone. Deserve. The word echoed in my mind. Caleb appeared to deserve everything, and I was supposed to just nod along. I put down the phone, took a deep breath, and walked out the door. I didn't realize it at the time, but by the end of the night, the image on their screens would have left them speechless in ways they had never been before. I sat in the back of the cab on the way to the ceremony, peering out at the city lights that blurred past the window. The world outside appeared alive, pulsating with energy, as if it were in tune with me for once. But inside, I felt heavy. The image of that group chat kept playing in my head, Caleb laughing at his concert, Mom cheering him on, and Dad piping in with words he hadn't used for me in years. That word deserve was repeated over and over like a drumbeat I couldn't shake. It wasn't new. It was not even unexpected. To be honest, I had seen it coming since I was a child. My parents had this habit of comparing everything I did to Caleb, and I constantly came up short. When I received a college scholarship, they remarked, "That's great, Paul, but don't brag. Your brother is still figuring things out." When Caleb joined a minor league team, they treated him as if he had just signed with Barcelona. I recall a Christmas that occurred many years ago. I'd saved up my allowance and part-time job money to get Dad a good watch, which I knew he'd been wanting. When he opened it, he smiled nicely and said, "Thanks, son," before setting it aside. Later that night, Caleb gave him a cheap gas station keychain with a soccer ball charm, and Dad chuckled, clipped it on his keys, and exclaimed, "Now this is special." Everyone applauded and teased Caleb for his thoughtfulness. I sat there calmly, suppressing the sting in my throat. The tendency only worsened as we became older. Caleb crashed his car once after a night out. My parents rushed to console him, bought him a newer model, and said, "Don't be too hard on yourself. Mistakes happen." When my car broke down from wear and tear because I couldn't afford a replacement, Dad shook his head and said, "You should have planned better, Paul." No sympathy, no help, just disappointment. Nonetheless, I continued hoping that one day they'd notice me. That one day they'd sit in the audience, clapping till their hands ached, smiling as if they were proud of me. That's why the award was important. It wasn't just recognition from strangers. It proved that my life, my decisions, and my hard work were worthwhile. Proof that I was not the darkness they portrayed me to be. But when I thought about it, I understood they didn't want to see it. They wouldn't do it, not because they couldn't. Caleb's radiance was simpler to soak in. He was noisy, charismatic, and messy in an acceptable way. I was quiet and steady, a reminder of the duty they refused to face. That week before the wedding, I tried to test the waters. I mentioned the nomination to Mom over the phone. She hummed distractedly and inquired if I had noticed Caleb's new haircut. I informed Dad that the award was from one of the largest organizations in my field. He nodded and continued, "That's great, but have you considered moving back closer to home? Caleb could use your assistance with some bills." It seemed like every topic circled back to him. The final straw before the ceremony came when I went home a month earlier. I hadn't been in a while, so I figured we'd sit down and talk. Instead, I entered the living room and discovered the mantel covered in Caleb's trophies, medals, framed photos, soccer tournaments, birthdays, and other milestones. My own graduation photo was no longer there. When I asked Mom about it, she simply answered, "Oh, we had to make room. It's in the drawer." The drawer, like my entire existence, might be hidden away and forgotten. So, when I saw their comments in the group chat that night, I knew I had been holding on to a delusion. They were not arriving. They never would. The ceremony was not for them. That was for me. And yet, a cruel part of me wished they could see, not simply hearing about it afterward, not just blow it off when I mentioned it months later, but see it firsthand, with no way out. The cab arrived at the location, and I stepped out into a haze of light and noise. Reporters stood by the entrance, cameras flashing, as the nominees walked the carpet. My stomach twisted. This was real. This was my moment. As I walked forward, fixing my tie, I could almost hear Caleb's voice taunting me. "Don't guilt us." I could hear Mom add, "We're busy." And behind it all, Dad's word, "deserve." That term didn't sting as much anymore because tonight I demonstrated precisely what I deserved. But the building tension wasn't just because they didn't show up. Something else was stirring within me. Anger, pride, and a quiet plan formed in the back of my mind. I didn't know how yet, but I wasn't going to let this be another time they passed over. This time, they couldn't look away. And the timing couldn't have been better, because I had no idea until I arrived that the organizers had a surprise in store. The awards event was not merely carried on local television, it aired nationally. My name, face, and narrative were going to receive far more attention than I could have imagined. I smiled to myself despite the agony in my chest. For years, I was pushed aside, minimized, and treated as if I didn't matter. Tonight, everything would change. Not because they wanted it to, but because they didn't have another option. And while I stood in line waiting to check in, I took out my phone once more. I stared at the family group chat, at Caleb's concert photo, Mom's heartfelt reaction, and Dad's words. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. Part of me wanted to send them one last message, a last opportunity, something as simple as, "It's being televised." But then I stopped. No, allow them to learn in the same way that the rest of the country would. I returned the phone to my pocket, straightened my shoulders, and walked inside. The ceremony had a weird energy, almost dreamy. I had attended events previously, but nothing like this. Cameras raking through the throng, flashes of light, people in sharp suits and gorgeous gowns, everyone vibrating with excitement. As I checked in, they handed me a tiny envelope containing my seat number and a badge with my name in bold lettering. Paul Harrison is a nominee. I turned it over in my palms, allowing the weight to soak in. I should have felt ecstatic, but something gnawed at me. That gnawing became a sharp twist when I looked at my phone again shortly before the ceremony began. Notifications popped up in the family group chat. Caleb had posted a series of photos at the concert, showing him beaming with his arm around his companions while clutching drinks and plastic cups. Another photograph of the stage lights. Another photo of him smiling with a band member who he undoubtedly asked for a selfie with. He titled one, "Best Night of My Life." I scrolled on. Mom wrote, "So proud of you, sweetheart," followed by applauding emojis. Dad went on, "You earned this, son. Nothing like making memories." That was the moment. That was the knife. Not only did they not show up for me, but they were celebrating Caleb's night as if it were a major accomplishment. I sat there in my fitted suit, months of preparation ready to pay off on one of the most significant nights of my life, and my own parents couldn't be bothered to notice. Worse, they were expressing their pride in him at a random concert, which was transitory. My chest tightened. I remembered every minor detail. Every instant, I brushed it off. My graduation picture is packed in a drawer. The cheap keychain was treated as if it were a treasure, whereas my carefully chosen gift was ignored. When I told Dad I had gotten my first job out of college, he hardly looked up from the television before asking if Caleb needed assistance with rent. I had gently eaten it all, hoping that one day it would be different. But staring at those messages made me grasp the reality. It wasn't going to be different. The betrayal was not limited to their absence. It was in the manner they emphasized that no matter what I did, I would never be enough, not compared to him. They didn't simply overlook me. They consciously opted to channel their pride, affection, and words of encouragement elsewhere. And this wasn't childhood anymore. I was not a youngster looking for approval. I was a man sitting in a room full of people who genuinely valued what I had accomplished, while my family cheered from the sidelines of someone else's life. The event began with lights darkening and music increasing. My focus should have been on the stage, the speakers, and the potential of hearing my name called. But all I could see was the group chat, my brother's grin, and my parents' applause, not for me, but for him. My hands trembled slightly as I placed the phone face down on my leg. I took a breath, but it did not settle me down. The sting developed into a burn, which evolved into something sharper. My trust in them, what little I had left, had vanished. That night, something inside me shifted abruptly and permanently. I wasn't simply disappointed anymore. I was finished. It was almost poetic in a horrible sense. At the exact time I was about to be seen by the world, the people who should have been my first and loudest supporters proved once more that they would never be. The contrast was terrible. It was like watching two versions of my existence collide, the one in which I was invisible at home and finally recognized outside of it. I didn't realize it at the time, but seeing my family shower Caleb with pride while I sat alone in that ballroom was the breaking point. I could never cross that emotional line again. From that moment forward, everything I did, planned, and anticipated was no longer about obtaining their approval. It was about something completely different. And as the announcer moved onto the stage, the cameras swept across the audience. I slumped back in my chair, my gaze locked on the dazzling lights overhead. My jaw stiffened, and a peculiar peace came over me. If they didn't want to see me, they would be forced to. The ceremony went like a dream, but within, I was drowning. I sat in a room full of strangers applauding speeches, the clink of glasses reverberating, and I felt torn in two. On the outside, I smiled as the cameras panned past, cheered politely for other victors, and nodded to the conversations going on around me. On the inside, I was spiraling. They then called my name. Yes, this is my name. I came onto the stage and took the prize with firm hands and a clear voice, yet I could barely hear myself. I recall flashes, the dazzling lights, the weight of the trophy in my hand, and the audience rising in a standing ovation. I must have said something comprehensible, because later others complimented me on how motivating my remarks were. However, my thoughts were elsewhere at the time. It was not based on the applause in front of me. It was the silence behind me, the absence of the only people who were supposed to be there. As I stood there holding that prize, a piece of myself broke off, like a rope snapping after years of tension. The little kid who wanted his parents to tell him, "We're proud of you," died softly on stage. The night ended with a celebration. There were photographs, interviews, and new contacts. Everyone smiled, shook my hand, and told me I had a bright future. However, when I returned to my flat, the walls were colder than ever. I placed the trophy on my desk and simply stared at it. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like ash in my mouth. I opened my phone. Of course, the family discussion remained active. Caleb had posted additional concert recordings, and my parents were fawning over them, with Dad remarking, "Wish we could do nights like this more often." I clicked and scrolled, hoping to see even a fleeting mention of me. A query regarding how my evening went, a basic good luck message. There was nothing, not a word. I laid back on the couch, phone facing down, and stared at the ceiling. My chest felt hollow, as if the air had been pulled out of me. It struck me then, I was on my own, not only physically, but emotionally. They'd never be the family I envisioned. That was my rock bottom. I did not cry, not that night. It wasn't sad anymore. It was a heavier, more resigned silence, the kind that occurs when you finally stop disputing with reality. In that silence, something else sparked, something sharper. I reflected on all the times I had twisted myself into knots attempting to gain their acceptance. During late-night phone calls, I would downplay my own accomplishments so Caleb wouldn't feel overshadowed. On weekends, I'd help Dad with housework while Caleb went out to parties, only to be admonished later that your brother has so much on his plate, you should be more supportive. Birthdays, graduations, job offers, moments when I should have been celebrated, but I was constantly encouraged to keep it quiet and not make it about me. Everything replayed in my thoughts like a horrible highlight reel. Then came a conclusion that shocked me to the core. I'd squandered years begging for morsels of validation that would never arrive. That was when the planning began. Not consciously at first, but quietly, as if seeds were sowed in the dark. I hadn't considered how I could exact revenge. Not yet. It began simply. I wondered how I could step away. How do I create something so far beyond them that they can never touch it, reduce it, or store it in a drawer? The answer was not immediate. It was not even clear. But the transition had begun. I could feel it when I stared at the trophy on my desk. Not as a reward, but as a reminder. A reminder that I did not need them to make myself noticeable. That I could be seen, whether they wanted to admit it or not. The next few weeks were some of the most difficult of my life. Every family call I ignored, every group chat notice I turned off. It was like pulling muscle from bone. I'd been conditioned for years to want their approval, so turning away felt strange and terrible. But every time I reached for my phone to react, I told myself to stop. They did not notice. Not really. Mom texted a few casual messages, usually regarding Caleb's games. Dad forwarded items he believed I'd find useful, but never inquired about my work. Caleb flooded the chat with photographs of his night outs, new attire, and weird quips. No one asked how I was doing. Nobody mentioned the award. And in that blank, in that oppressive stillness, I began to construct. I immersed myself in work, not as an escape, but as fuel. I began attending meetings that I had previously avoided scheduling. I approached mentors whom I had previously avoided engaging. I agreed to opportunities that worried me. Every night, I reminded myself, this is for me, not them. But deep inside, another voice whispered, one day they'll see. One day they won't be able to ignore you. That concept terrified me at first because it sounded harsh and spiteful, but the longer I sat with it, the more it seemed like clarity. I wasn't planning their collapse, not then, but I was done shielding them from the reality. I'm done allowing their carelessness to define me, done pretending that their preference didn't matter. Even though I couldn't see the whole picture yet, I knew one thing for certain. When the time came, I would not let it pass silently. The alteration in me did not occur overnight. It was mild, almost imperceptible at first. However, in the weeks and months after the award, I began to notice the changes stacking up like bricks, each one forming a wall between the old me, who lived for scraps of acknowledgement from my family, and the new me, who no longer need them. It began with opportunities that poured in following the wedding. The award had brought my name to the forefront, and doors that had previously been bolted shut broke open. Companies reached out. People I liked approached me about collaborating, and mentors who had previously overlooked me called me personally. At first, I felt like an imposter, as if I didn't belong in these conversations. But slowly, I discovered something I'd never allowed myself to believe. I'd earned everything. I took on projects that worried me, projects I would have previously avoided for fear of failing and hearing my family say, "See, you're not cut out for this." But without their voices in my ear, I felt lighter. And my success was more than just a professional victory. It demonstrated to myself that I didn't need their approval to be successful. My life began to shift in ways they could not predict. I moved to a better apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the downtown skyline. I began dressing differently, sharper suits, clothing that indicated the guy I was becoming rather than the quiet shadow I had previously been. My confidence grew, and people noticed. Strangers at networking events gravitated towards me. Colleagues looked to me for leadership, and mentors I formerly looked up to began treating me as an equal. Meanwhile, nothing changed in my family's environment. Caleb remained the focus of their attention, posting images of night outs and soccer games. Mom and Dad cheered him on with the same old fervor, as if each action was new. But from my new vantage point, things appeared different. For the first time, I recognized it clearly, not as a reflection of my inadequacy, but of their limitations. They had no idea how to value anything other than the simple, familiar glow Caleb supplied. I stopped craving their attention and instead began to embrace a new type of power: invisibility by choice. They didn't inquire about my life, therefore, I didn't elaborate. When Mom called, I kept our chat nice but brief. When Dad asked whether I could help your brother financially, apparently Caleb was behind on rent again, I simply replied, "I can't," and left it at that. For once, I didn't tie myself up in knots attempting to justify my boundaries. I didn't over-explain or apologize. I just let the stillness hang. They didn't press very hard. I believe they felt I was still quietly trudging along, the same dependable Paul who was always available when they needed something. They didn't realize how much had changed. And a part of me took quiet delight in the idea that I was creating something far larger than they could imagine right in front of their eyes. When you cease limiting yourself, success tends to multiply. Within a year, I had gained more than just respect in my area. People were starting to recognize my name. Invitations to speak at conferences poured in. There were articles written regarding the work I was doing. I was even requested to participate on panels alongside folks I had previously studied with in school. Every time I saw my name in print or was granted a microphone, I felt the weight of years of anonymity lifted. However, in the quiet moments, when the acclaim died down and I was alone in my apartment, I couldn't help but think of them, not with longing, but with detached interest. What would they say if they knew? Will they finally see me, or will they try to make it about Caleb? The thought did not hurt as much as it did before. Now it only fuels me. The tipping point came when I was asked to a national event that was larger than the award ceremony and anything I'd done previously, a televised gala honoring inventors and leaders from several industries. When I received the invitation, I laughed as I grasped the embossed envelope. Not because it was hilarious, but because it seemed like fate. I understood right away that this was it, a moment you couldn't avoid, the kind of illumination that can reach even the most difficult corners. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to simply step into the spotlight. I was going to own it. Nonetheless, I stayed quiet. I didn't mention it to my relatives. I didn't hint at the magnitude of what was coming. Let them continue to cheer Caleb on. Allow them to continue assuming I was just managing. When the night came, they'd find out alongside everyone else. And that's when I understood I wasn't simply climbing. I was prepared. Slowly, silently, I was laying the groundwork for something greater than achievement. Something that went beyond proving oneself. Because one day, they won't only have to acknowledge me. They'd have to address their actions, the years they'd spent neglecting, dismissing, and underestimating me. And when that day arrived, I wasn't sure I needed their apologies. What I wanted was for them to experience what I had, the pain of being invisible, the empty anguish of understanding you'd missed something significant. The invitation to the National Gala sat on my desk for weeks, its embossed letters catching the sun every time I walked by. I'd give it a casual glance, but within I could feel a hum of electricity. This wasn't your typical award or speaking occasion. This was the kind of platform that might solidify my place in the public eye, a spotlight so large and dazzling that even individuals who had spent their entire lives refusing to look at me would be forced to do so. However, the true setup for what was to come did not take place on the night of the gala. It started months ago, when the prospects from my accolades grew into something far bigger than I could have dreamed. One of the firms I collaborated with following my first major recognition was a media conglomerate with links in TV, print, and online. At start, it was simply a collaboration. I'd help them with their projects and offer my knowledge in exchange for visibility. But as time passed, I understood they weren't only interested in what I could offer. They were intrigued in my story, perspective, and ability to connect with an audience. It was unusual to go from being disregarded by my own family to suddenly being sought after by influential strangers. I recall sitting in a glass-walled office one afternoon, the city stretching behind me, when one of the executives leaned over and said, "Paul, people don't just respect your work, they relate to you, which is unusual. Have you considered what you could do with a larger platform?" That sentence stayed with me. A larger platform. Not only recognition in my field, but something beyond, something public, something apparent. And for the first time, I realized how years of quiet and dismissal could become fuel. If I leaned into it, if I told the world my tale, others could recognize themselves in me. Over the next 3 months, I began taking interviews for podcasts, magazines, and panels. At first, I kept my answers entirely business, discussing my career, projects, and aspirations. But gradually, I started to open up. I discussed resilience, being underestimated, and working in silence when no one believes in you. I didn't name my family, but I didn't have to. The message resonated on its own. The response stunned me. People inundated my email with messages, and I felt invisible too. Thank you for expressing what so many of us have experienced. You gave me hope. It was humiliating, but also clarifying. I wasn't just advancing for myself anymore. My narrative, my survival in the shadows, helped others find their voices. And as I got more visible, I felt more powerful. Meanwhile, my family remained unaware. Calls continued to come in about Caleb, his soccer league, his new girlfriend, and his plans that never seemed to materialize. When Dad inquired if I was still doing the same work, I almost laughed. He had no idea I had been promoted twice or that my name had been featured in big media. Mom complained that I didn't make enough visits and that Caleb missed me. Every talk was a rehash of the same script. Their universe was too little to realize what I was quietly creating outside of them, and I let them remain blind. I did not correct them, gloat, or hint. Silence became my weapon. Then came the meeting, which changed everything. The organizers of the National Gala requested me not only to attend, but also to receive a unique recognition, a Lifetime Achievement Award, notwithstanding my age, for my pioneering work in the sector. I almost laughed as I read the email. Lifetime achievement. At 27, the magnitude was ludicrous, yet it was genuine, and it would be televised live across the country. When I entered the gala planning session, I anticipated to talk about logistics, time slots, speeches, and costumes. What I didn't expect was for the director to lean across the table and say, "We'd like to feature your story as part of the televised broadcast. Not just your work, but your journey. We think people need to hear it." My chest tightened. For a brief moment, I imagined Caleb and my parents sitting at home, perhaps surfing through channels and stumbling onto me on their television screens. Hearing my experience, not as a family member to disregard, but as a narrative delivered to the entire country. Naturally, I agreed, but internally, I understood what this meant. The setup was completed. All the years of being minimized, all the invisible scars, all the swallowed words, they were about to be spoken out, framed in a way that no one could miss. The irony was almost too acute. My relatives had accused me of making them feel guilty for begging to be seen. They were going to hear the truth, whether they wanted it or not. They couldn't ignore it because it was delivered in a broadcast rather than a private plea. And, while I had no idea how they'd react, I knew one thing for certain. At the end of the night, the balance of power between us would never be the same. The night of the gala arrived with a weight pressing against your ribs. I stood in front of the mirror in my hotel room, fixing the cuffs on my suit. And, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was dressing up to impress others. Not my parents, not Caleb, not even the audience I was about to address. I was doing this for me, and, in a way, for the younger version of myself who had sat silently at dinner tables while everyone else hailed Caleb's latest accomplishment. The setting was stunning, a cathedral of lights and silk, cameras perched like hawks, ready to swoop. As I came down the red carpet, reporters leaned closer with their microphones, calling my name. I responded quietly and confidently, never revealing that my thoughts was elsewhere. Half on the stage I was about to walk upon, partly on the living room I imagined at home. I could picture the TV flickering and my parents relaxing into the couch after a long day. Caleb sprawled with his phone in hand, and they were all expecting another average evening. And suddenly my face would take up the entire screen. The program flowed like a well-rehearsed play. Speeches, performances, and applause in the appropriate places. I waited, each minute increasing the stress within me. When my category finally arrived, the announcer's voice echoed around the hall, describing my accomplishments, projects, and rise from obscurity. I could feel the cameras focusing on me and the heat of the lights pressing against my flesh. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from eagerness. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer finished, "please welcome tonight's honoree, Paul Harrison." As I came on stage, the applause rose like a tsunami. My shoes clicked on the glossy floor, each step heavier than the last, as if I were marching not just into the spotlight, but also into a confrontation. The presenter handed me the prize, which was sleek and sparkling. I shook his hand, smiled, and then turned to face the throng. 1,000 eyes peered up at me, and millions more through the cameras. The three faces I'd waited my entire life to see were somewhere among them, possibly at that same moment. I leaned into the microphone. My voice remained steady. "Thank you," I said, pausing to let the atmosphere settle. "This honor means more to me than just appreciation for my efforts. It symbolizes something deeper, what it means to be seen. After years of being invisible, I was finally seen." A quiet descended. My words were not technical or about my field. They were personal, deliberate. I grew up in a family that gave selective attention, where achievements were compared, measured, and frequently discarded. For years, I thought I wasn't good enough, that no matter how hard I worked, it would never be appreciated. I assumed invisibility was my fate. I let it dangle in the air. I did not give Caleb a name. I didn't bring up my parents explicitly, but the weight of my story dominated the room. But invisibility, I added, may be an effective instructor. It forces you to work in silence, to establish roots strong enough to withstand when no one is looking. It teaches you resilience, and when the time comes, when the light finally finds you, you're prepared to stand strong in it. The crowd changed. Some people nodded. Others leaned forwards. I could sense them connecting. I stand here tonight not because of what I've done, but because of what I've been through. Anyone who has ever been overlooked, rejected, or told they don't deserve to be recognized, please know that you do. You always did. And your time will come. Applause erupted, booming like thunder. The cameras flashed, but I didn't hear the audience in front of me. I imagined the astonished expressions, the tightening jaws, the understanding that the son and sibling they'd overlooked was now speaking to an entire nation. The speech was not about vengeance in the loudest, most violent sense. It was quiet, measured, and almost gentle. But that's what intensified the hurt. I had not reacted aggressively. I had not begged. I had simply stated the truth, which they had spent years denying, and delivered it in a way that millions of people appreciated. As I stepped off the platform, prize in hand, I realized the job was done. The retaliation did not consist of directly humiliating them. It was about ensuring that when they stared at that screen, they couldn't escape reality. I had risen without, above, and beyond them, yet they had missed it. My phone was buzzing all night after the gala. Messages flooded in from coworkers, mentors, and even strangers who had seen the show. People told me my remarks had impacted them and that they recognized themselves in my narrative. Some described me as brave, while others simply said, "Thank you." For the first time in my life, I felt the full weight of being seen. And it wasn't simply recognition, it was resonance. Among the scores of bright notifications, 3 stood out: the family group chat. Initially, it was silent. I envisioned the astonishment in their living room when my face came on national television, uttering truths they'd been ignoring for years. Finally, a message from Mom emerged. "Paul, why didn't you notify us about the major event?" I stared at it, allowing the words to soak in. "Not that we're proud of you. We are sorry we missed it." Just the same deflection and inability to accept responsibility, as if it was my fault for not pressing them to care. A second message arrived, this time from Dad. "You made us sound like bad parents on live TV. Do you understand what others will think?" I laughed. Not bitter or angry, just a little, unbelieving laugh. Even today, their first thought was to care about their look, how they were perceived, rather than what they had done. Then Caleb joined in. "Wow, brother, don't you think this is a touch dramatic? You made it sound like we've ignored you your entire life. Chill. It's not very profound." That was it, the final nail. I felt a strong clarity rush over me, almost peacefully. They had not changed. They never would. I didn't need them to. I did not respond to the group conversation. Instead, I entered 3 different messages. To Mom, "For years, I begged to be acknowledged. Last night, I was. You had a chance." To Dad, "You are correct. People will believe you were bad parents. That is because you were." And Caleb felt it was that deep. It always was. You simply never had to feel it. Then I silenced the conversation and put the phone down. For the first time, I felt no shame, longing, or fury. I just felt liberated. Word circulated rapidly following the gala. Relatives who had rarely spoken to me before reached out to congratulate me and express their pride. Old instructors emailed, saying they saw me on TV and remembered the quiet youngster sitting in the back of the classroom. Even neighbors wrote comments, stating they had no clue I had accomplished so much. My parents couldn't avoid it. Their friends watched the broadcast. Their co-workers mentioned it. Even folks at church mentioned it. Their son could be seen everywhere they looked. They couldn't get away from the story of the son they disregarded. In the weeks that followed, they attempted to repair the rift. Mom called and left voicemails loaded with forced enthusiasm. Dad sent lengthy texts regarding misconceptions. Caleb, as expected, made a joke about it, claiming that I had exaggerated the negligence. But the difference now was simple. I did not respond. Silence born of decision rather than loss. My life accelerated, new ventures, new platforms, new horizons, and each achievement increased the distance. The more the world cheered me, the smaller their justifications became. Months later, I returned home after another event and placed a second prize on the shelf next to the first. The city lights shone through my window, reflecting off the trophies and illuminating the room in gold. For a moment, I remembered the drawer at home, where Mom had stuffed my graduation photo to make room for Caleb's awards. I smiled. My achievements were no longer in a drawer. They were out in the open, for anyone to see. and the folks who had previously pushed me into the darkness were left blinking in the light, too late to shield their eyes. That was my vengeance. Not shouting, not vengeance in the classic sense, but living so fully and clearly that their years of negligence became their legacy rather than mine. I poured myself a glass of wine, stood by the window, and let the silence of the city night envelop me. For the first time, I did not feel invisible. I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to clap. "You're safe, comfortable, boring," my ex told me. I took her at her word, cut ties, and when she came back, begging, I had already moved on. I, a 26-year-old male, was dating this girl, Vanessa, a 24-year-old female, for about 2.5 years. I met her through my buddy's girlfriend at some rooftop party downtown. She was one of those girls who could walk into any room and suddenly everyone was gravitating toward her. She was super outgoing, always down for whatever, the total opposite of my more chill personality. The first year was honestly pretty great. She got me out of my comfort zone, dragged me to concerts I never would have gone to, and made me try sushi. I still hate it, but whatever. I started going to yoga classes because she was into it. Yeah, I was that guy doing downward dog next to a bunch of soccer moms at 6 in the morning. Don't judge me. My dad, Robert, thought the whole thing was hilarious. Yoga? Really? What's next? Juice cleanses? He said he's been my best friend since my mom died when I was 12. He raised me alone, taught me plumbing, and never remarried because he said one woman trying to change him was enough for one lifetime. He has this way of saying exactly what everyone's thinking, but is too polite to say out loud. Around year 2, things started shifting. She'd disappear entire weekends for girls' trips that seemed to happen every other week. She started following a bunch of festival influencers on Instagram, always talking about this amazing party in Vegas or that underground music thing in Miami. She made friends with this crew who were all about that live your best life energy. You know the type. Always posting stories with those generic motivational quotes over sunset pics. The ringleader was her friend Tiffany. This woman was like the devil on Vanessa's shoulder, except she wasn't even subtle about it. Tiffany, 26, worked some vague marketing job that apparently paid enough for her to hit up every major festival on the West Coast. She had this way of making every conversation about how Vanessa was too young to be tied down and needed to have fun in her 20s. Dad met Tiffany exactly once at a barbecue and immediately sized her up. That one's trouble. She's got dead eyes and the personality of a motivational poster, he said. He wasn't wrong. Tiffany would text Vanessa constantly about parties, trips, and opportunities that were too good to pass up. Vanessa would get these messages, and suddenly, our plans would change. Date night became, "Oh, Tiffany found this amazing warehouse party," or "Tiffany's friend knows a promoter who can get us into this exclusive thing." The conversation that ended everything happened 4 months ago on a random Thursday night. We were eating the stir-fry I made. Yeah, I cook. Fight me. I brought up my friend Marcus's wedding in October. Want to be my +1? It's going to be pretty fun. Open bar, good music. Marcus has been planning this thing forever. She literally laughed. Not a cute giggle, but a full-on laugh, like I had just asked her to help me move a couch. October, dude. That's like 5 months away. Who knows where we'll be then? I put my fork down. What do you mean, where we'll be? She took a sip of her drink, this $18 bottle she insisted we needed because it was organic or something, and looked at me like I was being dense. Albert, let's be real here. This is fun and all, but I'm not ready to settle down yet. I'm 24. I want to travel, meet new people, and experience things. I don't want to be tied down planning weddings and doing coupley stuff. So, what am I to you exactly? I asked. Here's where it gets good. She actually sat there and thought about it. Took another sip of her drink like she was contemplating world peace. You're comfortable, safe. You're like a security blanket. You're the kind of guy I'll come back to when I'm ready for all that serious stuff. But right now, you're kind of just a phase while I figure out what I really want. Just a phase. I felt like I was in that scene from Goodfellas where Henry's in the restaurant and everything goes quiet. A phase? Don't take it wrong. It's not you personally. I'm just not done having fun yet. When I'm like 28 or 29, I'll be ready for the whole settling down thing. Marriage, kids, whatever boring people do. And you assume I'll just wait around? I asked. She shrugged like we were talking about what to watch on Netflix. Why wouldn't you? We're good together. I just need to get this party phase out of my system first. You'll still be here doing your plumber thing, making decent money, being stable. That's what you're good at. I was literally a bookmark in her life story, something she could close and come back to when she finished the fun chapters. Good to know where I stand, I said. Don't be dramatic. I'm being honest. Most guys would appreciate that instead of me lying and stringing them along. I replied, You're right. I do appreciate the honesty. She smiled like she had just negotiated world peace and went back to scrolling through Instagram, looking at some influencers' Bali vacation pics. See, you get it. You're mature like that. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. But first, I called my dad. She said, What now? He asked, his voice flat, which meant he was pissed. Dad doesn't do emotional outbursts. He gets quiet and dangerous. I'm just a phase, a placeholder until she's ready for the real thing. He responded, Well, congratulations. You just got handed the best information you could possibly get. Most people waste years figuring out what you just learned in one conversation. I asked, What do you mean? He said, She told you exactly who she is and what you mean to her. Believe her. Now act accordingly. And if I was just a phase, a placeholder until she was ready for serious stuff, then I'd start acting like it. No drama, no begging, just cold, practical adjustments. It started that weekend. She wanted to hit up some warehouse party downtown that Tiffany had found. Come on, it'll be amazing. The DJ is supposed to be incredible. I said, Nah, I'm good. Have fun though. She was surprised but pleased. More freedom for her to do whatever. Finally, I was starting to think you were getting clingy. What she didn't know was that I'd started using those weekends for something way more productive. The first thing I did was stop investing in our relationship, not in some petty revenge way, just practically. I stopped buying groceries for her place. Why stock someone's fridge if you're temporary? I stopped meeting her party friends because honestly, why network with people I'd never see again once she moved on? She didn't notice at first because she was too busy living her best life with Tiffany as her hype woman. Every weekend was some new adventure. Pool parties, music festivals, spontaneous road trips to Austin or Nashville. Her Instagram became this highlight reel of shots at rooftop bars and dancing at venues I'd never heard of. Meanwhile, I quietly started rebuilding my life. I signed up for that woodworking class I'd been putting off for years. Turns out, I'm actually pretty decent with a table saw. I joined a hiking group that met Saturday mornings when she was usually hungover from whatever she'd done Friday night. I started volunteering at the local community center, teaching basic coding to kids. The big move was the house hunt. I'd been saving money for years from my plumbing jobs, always telling myself I was waiting for the right time or for us to be ready. Well, if there was no us in my future, why was I waiting? I found this incredible fixer-upper in Riverside. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a huge backyard. It needed serious work, but had amazing bones. Built in 1954, it had original hardwood floors, a sick mid-century fireplace, a kitchen straight out of the 1970s, and a bathroom with avocado green tiles. But I could see the potential. The inspection turned up some interesting surprises. Original copper plumbing that was actually in better shape than most modern houses I'd worked on. The electrical panel needed a complete overhaul, but everything else was solid. The foundation hadn't shifted an inch in 70 years. Dad came with me to look at it. He walked around for about 10 minutes, checked the foundation, looked at the electrical panel, and tested the water pressure. Roof solid, the foundation's good. Electrical needs some work, but nothing major. You'd be stupid not to buy it. I asked, Think I can handle all the renovation work? He said, Kid, I've been teaching you this stuff since you were 8. Plus, I'm not dead yet. I can still swing a hammer. The previous owners had been an elderly couple who'd lived there for 40 years. They'd kept everything original, but maintained it perfectly. They even left behind a workshop in the garage, complete with a vintage workbench and tools from the 1950s. Dad nearly had a heart attack when he saw it. These tools are worth more than your down payment. I put in an offer without saying a word to Vanessa. She was at Coachella with Tiffany, posting stories of herself covered in glitter, dancing to DJs I'd never heard of. I got the text that my offer was accepted while she was sending me videos of some art installation shaped like a giant cactus. Miss you, babe. This is incredible. Can't wait to tell you about it. I texted back, "Have fun." Then went back to reviewing the inspection report with Dad. He asked, "So, when are you going to tell Princess Party Girl about the house?" I replied, "Why would I? She's not going to be living in it." Dad grinned. "That's my boy." The hiking group was where everything started clicking into place. Every Saturday at 7 o'clock in the morning, we'd meet at different trailheads around the city, way better than sleeping off hangovers until 2 in the afternoon, like I used to do when Vanessa was out partying. That's where I met Claire, a 23-year-old personal trainer with a really dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. Our first conversation was about trail mix. "Whoever decided raisins belong in trail mix clearly hates joy," she said, picking them out of her bag. I replied, "Finally, someone with sense. Raisins are just disappointed grapes." She said, "Oh man, that's dark. I like it." We started hiking together more often, just as friends at first, since I was technically still with Vanessa, even though she'd made it clear I was just holding her place in line. Claire helped me pick out tile for the house renovation. Turns out she has really good taste and knows way more about home improvement than someone who spends all day at a gym should. I asked, "Why do you know so much about grout?" while we were at Home Depot. She said, "My dad's a contractor. I spent summers working for him instead of going to camp. Learned more about plumbing than most guys I train." She was right. The first day Claire came to help with the house, Dad was there installing new kitchen cabinets. I was nervous about them meeting, but I shouldn't have been. "You must be Claire," Dad said, not looking up from his level. "Albert's told me about you." She replied, "All good things, I hope." He said, "Yeah, he said you have opinions about tile. That's either very good or very bad." Claire laughed. "Depends on the tile, but yeah, I have opinions about most things." Dad said to me, "I like her already," then turned back to Claire. "Can you hand me that drill and tell me what's your position on subway tile?" She answered, "Timeless but overused. Good for resale value. Boring for actual living." Dad nodded. "Yep, I like her." Claire's construction knowledge was legit. She showed up the next weekend with her own tool belt and immediately spotted a problem with the kitchen layout that would have cost me thousands to fix later. "You can't put the dishwasher there unless you reroute that gas line. See how it runs right behind where you want the cabinet?" Dad was impressed. I was starting to fall for her. Meanwhile, Vanessa's party phase was escalating. Her Instagram posts were getting wilder. Photos with random guys at festivals, always captioned with stuff like "making memories with new friends" or "life's too short to say no to adventures." Tiffany would comment things like, "Yes, queen, this is what your 20s should look like." Dad saw one of her posts when I was scrolling through my phone during a lunch break. "God, she looks like she's about to overdose on attention. What's her endgame here?" I replied, "I don't think she has one. Tiffany's got her convinced this is what happiness looks like." The moment that really sealed it for me happened at the community center. I was teaching this 12-year-old kid named Mateo basic Python, and his mom came to pick him up. "You're really good with kids," she said. "Do you have any of your own?" I answered, "Not yet. Someday, though." She said, "Your girlfriend's lucky. Guys who are good with kids are rare." I almost laughed. My girlfriend was currently somewhere in the Nevada desert with Tiffany, probably rolling on Molly, explicitly not wanting kids or anything domestic like commitment. That night, I texted Vanessa, "We need to talk when you get back." She replied, "Ooh, sounds serious. You're not about to propose, are you? Because that would be super awkward," with 5 laughing emojis. I texted back, "Yeah, definitely not." Vanessa got back from Burning Man 3 days later, looking like she'd been through a sandstorm, sunburned, exhausted, smelling like patchouli and regret. She came over to my apartment. I still hadn't mentioned the house. Tiffany had apparently stayed in Vegas for some after-party that was too epic to miss. "So, what's this big serious talk?" she asked. "Please tell me you're not about to get all weird and clingy. I had such an amazing time, and I don't want to kill the vibe." "Actually, I wanted to thank you," I said. She looked confused. "Thank me for what?" I replied, "For being honest about what you think of me. It really clarified things." She looked uncomfortable. "I didn't mean it in a bad way." I said, "I know exactly how you meant it. You want to have fun now. Settle down later. I respect that, but I've realized I don't want to be anyone's phase, so let's end this clean." She was shocked. "Wait, what? You're breaking up with me?" I said, "We're breaking up with each other. You want to be free. I want to be valued. Win-win. She was genuinely shocked. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. I was supposed to wait around like a golden retriever, just happy when she came home. But we're good together. We work. I mean, you're perfect for me eventually. I replied, eventually. Key word there, you're totally overreacting. I just need some time to figure things out. God, you're being so dramatic about this. I said, take all the time you need, just not on my clock. She responded, this is ridiculous. You know what? Fine, but don't come crawling back when you realize you threw away something good. Most girls wouldn't even be honest about this stuff. She left angry and confused. Within an hour, she was posting Instagram stories with quotes about knowing your worth and men who can't handle strong, independent women who know what they want. Fine by me. I had crown molding to install. I called Dad afterward to let him know it was officially over. How'd she take it? He asked. About as well as you'd expect. Lots of dramatic quotes about men who can't handle honesty, he said. Good. Are you coming over tomorrow? That crown molding isn't going to install itself. After the breakup, Vanessa went into full party overdrive. Her Instagram became a non-stop highlight reel of clubs, festivals, and adventures. Every post was about her newfound freedom and living authentically. Meanwhile, I was working on my new house. The hiking group became my weekly therapy session. Claire and I were hanging out more, just as friends, but good friends. She helped me pick out a new refrigerator when my ancient one finally died. We spent an entire Saturday at appliance stores, arguing about whether stainless steel or black stainless was better. Black stainless shows fingerprints less, she said. I replied, but regular stainless steel matches the dishwasher I already bought. She said, fair point. Also, you actually bought a dishwasher before you had a working kitchen. That's very optimistic of you. Dad was there too, of course. He said he's been optimistic about dumb stuff his whole life. At least this time, it's useful. Claire started spending more time at the house, helping with projects and just hanging out. Dad treated her like she'd been part of the family for years, which was his way of showing approval without actually saying it. Claire, can you hold this level while I mark these spots? Dad asked during a kitchen renovation session. Sure thing, Robert, she replied. He said, good. Albert, your girlfriend has steadier hands than you do. I corrected, she's not my girlfriend yet. Dad said, I heard that. Claire, you hear that? He said, yet. Claire grinned. I heard it. Dad said, excellent. Now both of you shut up and help me install this cabinet. Apparently, Tiffany was keeping tabs on my social media and reporting back to Vanessa. I'd post normal stuff, pictures from hiking, the kids at the coding camp, my attempt at making homemade pasta. An epic failure, but hilarious. This bothered Vanessa because it meant I was doing fine without her. Tiffany started commenting on my posts with passive-aggressive remarks like, wow, someone's really embracing the single life. Good for you, and hope you're not just posting the highlights while you're actually miserable inside. I blocked her after the third comment. Then Vanessa started showing up places. The coffee shop I went to Sunday mornings, the gym. She even showed up at the community center, claiming she wanted to volunteer. Albert, wow, funny running into you here, she said. I replied, hey Vanessa, here to volunteer with the kids? She said, yeah, totally. I love kids. Want to give back, you know. The coordinator started asking about her availability. Suddenly, she remembered she had a trip to Mexico planned with Tiffany, then a festival in Colorado, then a girls' weekend in Vegas. She never came back. The real explosion happened when she found out about the house. Not from me, but from our mutual friend William, who'd helped me move my couch. My phone blew up. You bought a house? When were you going to tell me? I can't believe you made that decision without me. We talked about buying a house together. That last one made me actually laugh out loud. We had never, not once, talked about buying anything together. She'd specifically said she wasn't ready to settle down. I finally responded, I bought a house for my future. You made it clear you weren't part of that future. Why would I consult you? She replied, because we were together for 2.5 years. That's a huge decision. I said, were. Past tense, your choice. You're being so petty about this. It's not like I said I never wanted to be with you. I responded, you said I was a phase, a placeholder. Those were your exact words. She tried calling like 15 times. I was busy helping Claire plant tomatoes in my new backyard. Turns out she knows everything about gardening too. That night, she went nuclear on social media, posting a long rant about men who make major life decisions in secret and can't communicate properly. Tiffany, from a new fake account, was all over the comment section backing her up, calling me manipulative and clearly threatened by Vanessa's independence. Her whole squad rallied around her, saying I was shady and deceptive. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who told me I was just a phase was mad that I planned a future without her. Things stayed quiet for about a month. I was living in the house, still doing renovations, but it was totally livable. The vegetable garden was actually producing food. Life was genuinely good. Claire and I had started dating officially. We took it slow, but it was different from day one. She talked about future plans like I was obviously going to be there. She made dinner reservations 2 weeks out without hedging. It was weird how refreshing that was. Dad loved watching us together. "This is what normal looks like," he told me one day while we were installing new baseboards. "No drama, no games, just two people who actually like each other." I said, "It's nice." He corrected, "Nice? That's the best you can do? It's not nice, it's healthy. There's a difference." Then Vanessa's 25th birthday hit, and apparently it triggered some kind of existential crisis. Her Instagram shifted from party pics to inspirational quotes about new chapters and growth. Her posts got more philosophical, less about shots, and more about authentic living. She texted me, "Hey, I've been doing a lot of thinking. Can we talk?" I was curious enough to say yes. We met at a neutral coffee shop downtown, the kind of place with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. She looked different, less party girl, more tired, like she'd been running on fumes for months and finally ran out of gas. "Thanks for meeting me. I know things ended weird between us," she said. I asked, "What's up, Vanessa?" She said, "I've been thinking about what I really want, like really thinking, and I realize I was being immature before. I'm ready now." I asked, "For what?" She replied, "To settle down, to be serious. I got all the party stuff out of my system. I'm ready for the next chapter with you." She said it like she was doing me a favor, like I should be grateful she'd finally decided I was worth her time. I said, "So because you're ready now, I should just be available." She responded, "We were good together, Albert. You know we were. I just needed time to grow up and experience things. Now I have, and I know what I want." I asked, "And what made you think I was just sitting around waiting because you loved me?" She said, "I know you did. That doesn't just disappear. Plus, let's be real. You're a plumber. It's not like you have tons of options." Even now, she was talking down to me. I replied, "You're right. I did love you. Past tense. You told me I was just a phase, so I acted accordingly." "I didn't mean it like that." I said, "You meant it exactly like that. You wanted to party and have fun without me, then settle for me when you were done, like I was a retirement plan." She started crying. Not sad tears, but frustrated tears. "So what? You're punishing me? Is that what the house was about? To hurt me?" I said, "The house is about building my future. A future you explicitly said you didn't want to be part of, yet I took you at your word." She asked, "I saw you with that girl on Instagram, the trainer. Is this about her?" I replied, "Claire, her name is Claire, and no, this isn't about her. It's about me choosing to be with someone who doesn't see me as something to settle for later." That hit home. She physically flinched. "I never said for you." I reminded her, "Settling down with me was what you'd do when you were done having fun. Your exact words. That makes me the safe, boring choice for after the party ends." She said, "So that's it? 2.5 years together, and you just move on like I meant nothing." I replied, 2.5 years, and you moved on first. You just expected me to stay in place while you did." She tried one last desperate play. "What if I was pregnant?" I almost walked out right there. "Are you?" I asked. She said, "No, but what if I was?" I replied, "Okay, even if you were, what makes you think I'd believe it's mine?" She said, "You're such an... I was honest with you, and this is how you repay me." She left angry, blocked me on everything, and posted more quotes about men who can't handle personal growth and how sometimes people show their true colors when you're vulnerable. That evening, I was at the house with Dad and Claire, installing new light fixtures in the dining room. I told them about the coffee shop meeting. Claire asked, "She actually said, you don't have options because you're a plumber?" I confirmed, word for word. Dad put down his screwdriver. That girl has no idea what she just walked away from. Twice. I asked, what do you mean twice? He said, once when she decided you were a phase. Again today when she assumed you'd be grateful for her scraps. He picked up his screwdriver again. Her loss. Claire, can you flip that breaker back on? She replied, sure thing, Robert. He said, good. Now let's see if Albert wired this right, or if we need to call a real electrician. Vanessa's rejection apparently sent her into a complete spiral. According to mutual friends, she became obsessed with proving I was making a mistake. Tiffany was feeding into this hard, constantly telling her that I was obviously rebounding and that Claire was just a gym bunny who doesn't know the real me like Vanessa does. The harassment started small. Vanessa would drive by the house when I was working in the yard. She'd sit in her car across the street for like 20 minutes just watching. I ignored it at first, figuring she'd get bored and move on. Dad noticed first. Blue Honda keeps driving by. Same one's been parked across the street 3 times this week. That's Vanessa stalking now. Classy. He didn't look up from the deck railing he was sanding. Want me to go have a chat with her? I said, nah, she'll get bored eventually. He replied, if you say so, but if she escalates, I'm not asking permission next time. Then Tiffany started following me around town. She'd show up at the grocery store I went to, the coffee shop, always with her phone out, pretending to be casual while obviously taking pictures. She'd report back to Vanessa about everything, who I was with, what I was buying, even what I was wearing. Tiffany got bold enough to accidentally bump into Claire at the gym during peak hours. She made a huge scene, apologizing loud enough for everyone to hear, then started this fake conversation. Oh my God, you're Albert's new girl. He's such a catch. I can't believe Vanessa let him go. She's been such a mess since the breakup, like seriously struggling. Maybe you could talk to him about giving her another chance. Claire handled it like a pro. I think Vanessa's struggles are between her and her therapist, not me and my boyfriend. Tiffany's face went red. Things escalated when Vanessa and Tiffany figured out Claire's schedule. They started showing up at the gym where she worked, coincidentally needing day passes to work out. They'd make loud comments about how some people just go for the first rebound they find and how it's sad when men can't handle being alone. Claire handled it better than I did. They're just jealous. Vanessa had something good and threw it away. Now she's seeing what she lost. But it got worse. Tiffany started messaging Claire on Instagram with fake concern. Hey girl, just wanted to give you a heads up about Albert. He's super controlling and manipulative. Ask him about how he made Vanessa feel like she couldn't have friends or go out. He's just putting on an act for you. Claire showed me the messages. She's really trying hard to break us up. I asked, what did you tell her? She said that she should find a hobby that doesn't involve other people's relationships. Dad's response was more direct. Block her. Block them both. And if they show up at your work again, call the police. Vanessa and Tiffany doubled down. They started spreading rumors to mutual friends about how I was love-bombing Claire and how they were worried about her because I was showing all the red flags of an abuser. The same tactics abusers actually use, isolating their target by making everyone else seem untrustworthy. The flowers started appearing on my porch 2 weeks later. No cards, just flowers. Every few days, new ones would show up. I threw them away, but they kept coming. Secret admirer? Dad asked, seeing me carry another arrangement to the trash. I said, Vanessa, she's losing her mind. He replied, no, she's trying to make you lose yours. Don't let her. Then Claire started getting packages at work. Designer workout clothes, expensive supplements, gift cards to fancy restaurants, all anonymous. But we both knew who was sending them. It was like Vanessa was trying to buy Claire's loyalty or prove she had money to throw around. The final straw was when Tiffany called Claire's boss, claiming I was harassing Claire and that she was concerned for her safety. Claire's boss had to sit her down and ask if everything was okay at home. It was humiliating for her and potentially damaging to her career. That night, I called a lawyer and explained the situation, the stalking, the harassment of Claire, the attempts to damage her reputation. He said I had enough for a restraining order against both of them. Document everything, he said. Save all the messages, take pictures of the flowers, get statements from witnesses. This is textbook stalking and harassment. I filed the paperwork on Monday morning. Vanessa and Tiffany were served Tuesday afternoon. The restraining order required them to stay 500 feet away from me, my house, my workplace, and Claire. Dad was installing a new kitchen backsplash when I got home with the paperwork. "How'd it go?" he asked. I said, "Restraining orders in effect. They've been served." He replied, "Good. Should have done it weeks ago. Think it'll actually stop them?" I said, "If they have any sense, yeah. If not, well, they'll learn the hard way that judges don't care about your feelings." For about a week, it was quiet. I thought maybe the legal reality check had finally gotten through to them. I was wrong. Last Friday night, I was at home working on refinishing the back deck when I heard someone on my front porch. It was almost 11 at night, so I figured it was a delivery that got dropped off late. I opened the door to find Vanessa sitting on my porch steps, clearly drunk, surrounded by about 24 roses. She was crying, makeup running down her face, holding a drink. "Albert, please. I just want to talk. I love you. I've always loved you. Tiffany was wrong. I should have never listened to her. I want to come home." I said, "Vanessa, you can't be here. You have a restraining order." She replied, "I don't care about that stupid paper. This is my home too. We can work this out." She tried to stand up and stumbled. The bottle fell and shattered on my concrete steps. I said, "You need to leave now. I'm calling the police." She panicked. "No, please, just listen to me. Claire doesn't know you like I do. She's just using you for your house and your money. I'm the one who really loves you." I already had my phone out, dialing 911. Vanessa heard me and started panicking more. "Albert, no, please don't do this. I'll leave. Okay, I'll go right now." But she was too drunk to even walk properly. She fell trying to get off the porch, scraped her knee, and started crying harder. The cops showed up about 10 minutes later. 2 officers, both professional, but clearly not surprised by the situation. "Sir, can you explain what's happening here?" one asked. I showed them the restraining order and explained the situation. Vanessa was still on my lawn, now lying in the grass, crying about how she'd made a mistake and just wanted to fix things. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for violating a restraining order. You have the right to remain silent." They cuffed her and put her in the back of the patrol car. One officer stayed to take my statement while the other called for someone to clean up the broken glass. "Has she contacted you since the restraining order was issued?" the officer asked. I said, "No direct contact, but she's been driving by the house. I have security camera footage." He said, "We'll need copies of that. This probably won't be her only violation." The officer's partner came back with a tow truck driver. Turns out Vanessa had parked her car illegally on my street before stumbling up to my porch. They were impounding it along with arresting her. The tow truck guy was pulling her Honda onto his flatbed while she watched from the back seat, still crying. "That's going to cost her at least $300 to get out of impound," the cop said. "Plus bail, plus court costs. Expensive night." I watched them drive away with Vanessa in the back seat, still crying, probably facing a night in jail and additional charges. Dad showed up about 20 minutes later. I'd called him after the cops left. "You okay?" he asked, looking at the rose petals scattered across my porch. I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just glad it's finally over." He asked, "Is it though? Over, I mean." I replied, "Has to be. She's looking at real jail time now." Claire arrived a few minutes later. Dad and I were sweeping up glass while she picked up rose petals. "You know what's weird?" Claire said. "I almost feel sorry for her. She had something real with you and threw it away because her friend convinced her she could do better." Dad said, "Tiffany didn't convince her of anything. She just gave Vanessa permission to act on what she already wanted. Tiffany was just the excuse." I looked around my house, the kitchen I'd renovated, the garden we'd planted, the life I'd built. Claire was right. Vanessa had traded something real for something that looked good on social media. Her loss. I said, "I'm exactly where I want to be." Dad finished sweeping up the last of the glass. "Should have listened to me from the beginning. I told you that girl was trouble." I said, "Yeah, you did." He replied, "Of course I did. It's my job to spot the crazy ones before they waste your time. Although, to be fair, this one wasted way more of her time than yours." Vanessa was right about one thing. She wasn't done having fun yet. Turns out neither was I. I just found a better definition of it, one that didn't involve waiting around for someone to decide I was worth settling for. The best part, it wasn't even revenge. It was just building the life I wanted with people who wanted to be in it right now, not after they finished their phase. Vanessa wanted me to be a phase in her life, something she'd come back to when the party ended. Instead, she became exactly what she designated me as. Just a phase, one I'd grown out of. She's probably getting booked right now, facing charges for violating a restraining order. Me? I'm in my house with my garden, with someone who doesn't see me as a placeholder for when she's ready to get serious. Dad's here making sure I don't do anything stupid, and Claire's here because she wants to be. All right, Dad said, putting the broom away. Crisis over. Claire, you staying for dinner? I'm making my famous chili. Claire asked, is it actually famous? He replied, depends on your definition of famous. Albert's been eating it for 20 years and he's not dead yet. I said, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement. He shot back, you want a ringing endorsement? It's better than anything you cook. Claire said, he's not wrong. Dad grinned. See, she gets it. I like this one, Albert. Don't screw it up. I said, I won't. He replied, good. Now, let's go inside before the neighbors start talking about the crazy woman who got arrested in your front.